Hello, you're watching TVP World. I'm Jonasz Rawiński. The recent state elections in Germany have shown the far-right party, Alternative for Germany, to be on the rise. And with elections coming up next year, the threat seems to be real. The big question is what's going to happen next. Will the German political elites react to this by reinforcing their opposition to what the AfD represents? Or will perhaps this show further cracks in the establishment, making their way and appearing as elections are drawing ever closer? But also, we'll be talking about the security issues, where Germany and the rest of NATO stand with regards to the war in Ukraine. All this and more will be featured in our conversation today with our guest, John Kampfner, author. Hello and welcome to TVP World.
Hello.
So let us begin with Alternative für Deutschland, or Alternative for Germany, a far-right party which has either won or came close to winning in 3 state elections, seriously undermining the position of both Olaf Scholz but also of other mainstream political parties. Do you think that there is a serious risk of Germany at some point beginning to slide back into some sort of non-democratic system, whereby populist parties begin to erode the very essence of democracy?
Yes, there is that danger. It is absolutely not a danger that one should confuse with the 1930s. It is partly a German-specific problem, but it is more than that, a European and broader Western problem. Pretty much every country has either been through this mega populist wave, or is going through it, or is about to go through it, or in the case of the United States, could be going through it for a second time. Poland has had that phase. France could well be having that phase to go round the European map. My original country, the UK, had its terrible moment of crisis and, in my view, self-damage in 2016 with the Brexit referendum. So these currents are very much a wider reflection of the weaknesses of the economic model in the West, but also the difficulties that mainstream centrist politicians from the old way of thinking, the center-right Christian Democrats, through to the center-left Social Democrats, the problems that all these parties are having.
Do you think we can actually compare this to the situation we've had a long time ago with the Communist International being a serious force in politics? Now we're looking at something we could refer to as an international of populists. And Russia is once again apparently playing the center stage there, with reports of either interference or supporting specific parties, providing funds and so on. Do you think that this is a security threat that we should treat as foreign interference in elections, perhaps on a European level?
There is ample evidence that the Kremlin is supporting, sometimes financially, often politically, most definitely through social media, the populist wave across not just Europe and the United States, but wider afield in the world, in Brazil with Bolsonaro, in Indonesia with Duterte. One could go further still. Now, the Putin and the Kremlin certainly didn't invent this phenomenon. What he has done is opportunistically and skillfully tap into these waves and help them. And there is this fascinating phenomenon when we use these labels, which in some way are redundant when we talk about far right, alt-right, extreme right. In Germany, you mentioned in your introduction the Alternative for Germany, which is a classic far right party which borders on the neo-Nazi and has been so described in some regions by the Constitutional Office. At the same time, there is a smaller insurgent party run by a woman called Sarah Wagenknecht, which has come from nowhere to gain around 15% in the 3 eastern regions that you refer to. And she came from the far left, used to be a leading light in Die Linke, the left party. So you have this phenomenon of the horseshoe, where the far left meets the far right. And in some ways, they have come together in a similar package of ethno-nationalist politics, hardline on immigration, coupled with a lot of either overt or covert racism. But on the other side, some interventionist economic thinking that resembles, in many ways, old-fashioned socialist economic planning.
And very briefly, would you say that this is in a way a reflection of the issue of unification of Germany? Germany celebrates its reunification in October every year, but right now we're actually talking about this and eastern parts of Germany experiencing this phenomenon. What does it tell us about German society?
Yeah, I mean, in a few weeks' time, we've just, as you say, we've just marked the October the 3rd celebration of reunification. November the 9th is the 35th anniversary of the Berlin Wall coming down. I was there as a young journalist watching those events. It was an incredible, peaceful revolution, an incredible positive reflection on Germany and the process towards unification. Now, mistakes were then clearly made, excessive, zealous privatization, a lot of social, cultural arrogance, perhaps. But it was still, in my view, an incredibly successful process. If you look at the infrastructure of the eastern states, formerly the GDR, it's in pretty good state. There are problems, but a lot of this is a wider sense of, it's not so much reflected in economics, but in a sense of cultural disenfranchisement. And one sees that, as I said, Poland had this wave. Hungary is very much going through that now. Slovakia is too. So there is still a lot of unfinished business that began in 1989.
Jumping quickly to the global situation, what should we expect from the Ramstein meeting? President Biden said he's not going to be attending right now because he's got the hurricane to deal with. But regardless, what do you think is going to happen this year?
Yeah, I mean, that's a big blow. It's a big blow for President Zelensky. It's also a blow for Germany, remarkably, given Germany's pivotal position in Europe. There hasn't been an American president visiting since Barack Obama in 2016, which is quite remarkable. Germany is very much seen as the first port of call. Relations between Germany and Washington were an absolute catastrophe under Donald Trump, who absolutely loathed, I think that's the right word to use, Angela Merkel, and the feeling was mutual. Things have definitely recovered, but Biden hasn't been here, so they were looking forward to that. The meeting will continue. America, the United States, will bring a strong delegation, discuss the further military support for Ukraine, but everybody now is looking over their shoulders at the forthcoming American elections. And I think it is not an exaggeration to say that pretty much, I don't know what figure one could put on it, but maybe 90% of the fate of Ukraine and its resisting the Russian invasion will be determined by who wins that American election.
Do you think it's possible for the Ramstein summit to provide some sort of Trump-proofing, if you will, in this context, in order for Ukraine to continue to receive aid, regardless of who wins in Washington?
Yes, absolutely. And I think that's already factored in. There will be an injection of further aid from the United States and from Europe. Germany is by far the second largest contributor and the largest contributor in Europe. There'll be a lot of pressure, as you say, but it's only temporary future-proofing for two reasons. One is if Trump wins, he'll be there for 4 years, and arms packages tend to last pretty much only 6 months or 1 year. And in any case, they take from the moment an agreement is signed until the first weapon being delivered can be up to 6 months. So there will be a delay factored in as. But more importantly is going to be, if Trump does win, the pressure that he has promised openly to exert on Zelensky, who he seems to just about tolerate, but he absolutely adores Vladimir Putin. And I think the pressure from Trump onto Ukraine to cut a very unsatisfactory deal is going to be very strong.
So we are facing an uncertain moment in history. John Kampfner was our guest today here on TVP World. Thank you very much for joining us and for sharing your insight. And I'm You're watching TVP World. Please do stay with us.